So, welcome to this session on School Towards Transition. This session is in memoriam of Francesco Pastore. I'm really happy to have been able to organize this session together with Klaus. So Klaus, again, thank you for all the organizational support. Let me thank you all the organizational committee of the GLO for organizing this amazing work conference and for hosting this session. Obviously, thank you so much to Misbah for helping me in the organization, and to all of you for accepting our invitation to present your paper. Let me give you just some a few words on Francesco. He passed away too early on July 13 this year, 2022. He has been an excellent labor economist, a great servant of the scientific community, a prolific researcher. And one of his favorite topics was the School Towards Transition. So this is the reason for this session. He has been the leader for the Italy country cluster, the GLO, and I had the honor of taking his place in this prestigious role. So my thoughts are with Francesco's wife and the little daughter. My wish is that this session will also be useful for the daughter to rebuild the pieces of her father's brilliant career. I would like to give you now the floor to Klaus and to Misbah and to Claudio for give some just a few words about Francesco, and then we can start with the presentations with the presentation by Irene. So Klaus, please, the floor is yours.
Sorry, yeah, thank you very much, Sergio, for making this event possible, and also Misbah for your job in completing his last project, which I was following from the beginning. Well, he was an old friend and a very good colleague. We have met each other for years on conferences. We also collaborated on research, as you know, and so I was quite shocked when I, of course, like we all, when we heard about this, because he had so, I mean, I talked with him only recently before, and he had so many plans. He was so ambitious, so a true scientist, as I like colleagues who are really devoted to their work and want to change things for the good. And so he's really one of those people we are missing. And for GLO, it's also a great loss because he was a man of the first hours, and he has brought so many colleagues to the club, so to speak. So I will keep a long and persistent memory on him. Thank you.
Okay. Misbah, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you very much, Sergio and Klaus, as well, for your support and for organizing this session. It's an honor for me to speak about Francesco Pastore. I was the last person who was working with him on this project, on the special issue. And you can imagine his dedication and love for his work, that he emailed me from his hospital bed. And he said, he asked me about, because we were working together on an empirical paper, and asked me about that. Okay, what's the progress on that? Are we moving in the right direction, and that sort of stuff. So it's a really shocking news for all of us. And I was fortunate to work with him, but unfortunate only for a short period of time. And definitely we are going to miss him. So he was not only a great human being, but also a great researcher. And definitely we are going to remember him, his academic contribution in this area. And we wish that we should continue to work on those lines and pray for his soul. So may his soul rest in peace, and that's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Misbah, for your kind words. Claudio, do you want to take the floor?
Yes. I am Claudio Quintano of the University of Naples Partenope. I am delighted to meet you all and allow me to express a particular pleasure to meet in action as a scholar, as organized, Klaus, who was particularly close as myself and Antonella and others here present to Francesco Pastore, to whom this research session, Global Labor Organizations, was dedicated. On the 13th July of this year, Francesco passed away from the affection of his family and many of us. And that same day, the Italian Parliament approved the Technical High School on organization for the production as education services capable of minimizing the transition time from school to work, very present in his studies, which brought us, Italy, into line of Germany and France. Antonella and I have the pleasure to describe to you the significant paths conceived for its realization, very dear to Francesco. Many thanks, and I kind regards to Misbah and Sergio for making this piece of work where we met Klaus. Many regards to Francesco's wife, Mrs. Linda, and to the daughter, Serena, and to the brother, Fulvio. Many thanks.
Thank you so much. I don't know whether Antonella, do you want to speak now or do you want to speak later or about Francesco?
Later with the presentation.
Okay. Thank you. So I think we can start with the presentation by Irene. I think we can have, let's say, 12-14 minutes for the presentation, and then we'll a short discussion just after each paper. Thank you, Irene. The floor is yours.
Okay, thanks to everybody, and thanks for, first of all, thanks to the organizer of this conference, and in particular for the organization of this session. So the paper that I will present you is a joint paper with Andrea Ricci, another researcher of Inapp. This paper is important because it deals with an important issue, that is the efficiency of active policies. So why the paper? It's well known that young people are an at-risk population, in the sense that they face a high risk of unemployment. They are more likely to switch between states of joblessness or to enter precarious types of employment. Moreover, youth has been one of the group hardest hit by recession of 2008 and by coronavirus pandemic. So to contrast with this alarming situation, European Commission decided to reinforce the Youth Guarantee Program. That is an active policy introduced to give young people all possible opportunities to develop their full potential. So based on this consideration, this paper wants and try to evaluate this particular active policy related to the Youth Guarantee Program, established in Italy for the year 2017 using an innovative dataset. So, first of all, what are hiring incentive programs? They are active demand-side policies that aim to push employers to hire new workers by reducing the cost of labor that they support. Moreover, this kind of active policy aims to stimulate the labor demand in particular areas or sectors that are characterized by high unemployment rate, or to support people that are at risk of labor market exclusion. Regarding the literature, the Youth Guarantee Program is subject to continual monitoring and evaluation. Immervoll and Scarpetta in 2012 stressed that a well-designed policy strategy can contribute to better labor market outcomes, minimizing the possible interferences on work incentives for beneficiaries. Kluwe et al. In 2019 showed that only 1 on 3 evaluation exercise found positive effect. Regarding to Italy, there are a lot of papers, for example, the paper of Pastore and Pompili in 2019 that suggests that this kind of labor active policy have a positive effect and positive and statistically significant effect on young people and on young people employment prospects. There are other analyses, for example, of ISFOL or of AMPAL that confirm this positive effect. However, if we try to understand from the demand side point of view, very few papers study the effectiveness of hiring incentive. Among the most recent paper, we find Alfonsi et al. In 2020 that comparing the impact of vocational training for workers to the impact of wage subsidies to train workers on the employment suggests that the positive effect measured on the employment rate of workers is confirmed also looking at the firm side, and that this result is explained by authors with a better match of these workers and with 2 more productive firms. Other analysis, for example, the paper of Ciani and de Blasio suggests that only very few firms took advantage of these kind of incentives. Okay, now look at the characteristics of the hiring incentive that we study. First of all, the program is targeted and selective. The program can be defined targeted because it refers to all firms operating in the private sectors. Selective because the incentive must be approved by the National Social Security Institution. So this kind of incentive is due to all firms in the private sector that hire from January up to December with permanent fixed term or apprentice contract. The incentive is paid as a social contribution, that is contribution bracket, sgravio contributivo, and it's enjoined by adjusting at the end of the year the social security contribution paid by employer within a maximum limit. Now move to the identification strategy that we use to evaluate this hiring incentive. The evaluation of the causal effect of the incentive related to young youth program, youth guarantee program, is the estimation of the following equation, where the dependent variable is the share of newly hired with less than 30 years old over the total of employment. The main explanatory variable is a dummy equal to 1, whether the firm hired by using this incentive, or 0 otherwise. M, W, and F represented are the vectors of different characteristics, firms characteristics, worker characteristics, and firms' productive characteristics, for example, the geographical location, the sectoral specialization, and so on. Okay, so as a first step, we estimate the cross-sectional specification of this equation, imposing the year equal to 2017 and beta 2 and beta 3 equal to 0. However, we know that the standard OLS estimation of the coefficient may be biased by because of some confounding factors related to firms' time invariant unobserved heterogeneity, or because of indigeneity issues. So, to minimize or to remove these problems, we exploit a unique information that we can find in the real questionnaire, in the sense that there is a question that allows us to build the counterfactual scenario, in the sense that we can develop the hypothetical prediction of what would have happened in the absence of the policy. And the question is the following. So we ask to firms that have declared to use the incentive to hire new workers, if in the absence of this policy, would the firm have hired in any case for the same amount, or hired in any case but for a lower amount, or would have not made these new hires. So this is the questions of real that allows to construct this counterfactual situation. So as a second step, we replace the previous dummy variable with another dummy variable that we call the counterfactual, that is equal to 1 if the firm claims that it used the incentive to hire, and that in the absence of the policy, or would have not hired, or would have done but for a different amount. For the control group, we follow the approach proposed by Louvain and Oosterbeek in 2008, and we construct we use two different control groups. The first one is composed by firms have not hired, or firms have hired but without using incentive, or by firms whose behavior was not affected by the incentive, in the sense by those firms that answer 1 to our survey question. The second control group focus only on firms that have declared that have hired new workers, or without incentive, or using the incentive, but their behavior was not affected by the presence of the policy. However, to control for possible bias due to time invariant unobserved heterogeneity, we decide to also perform another method, that is the difference in difference with the firm fixed effect. In this case, we use another control group that now is composed by all firms that did not use the youth guarantee incentive. The data set. The data set is innovative, is original, because it's built linking 3 different data sets. we link two administrative archives with a survey. The survey is the RIL, Rilevazione Imprese e Lavoro, conducted by Inapp. The two administrative archives are respectively Comunicazioni Obbligatorie, that is an administrative data set provided by the Ministry of Labor, and the Asia archive provided by Istat. So moving to the so we match the firms using their tax code, so we obtain an employer-employee data set. The outcomes is the share of newly hired workers, and we use different control variables, and we select all firms with at least one employee, with no missing value for all variables we use in the analysis. I move to the main results according to the first step estimation. So this table reports the OLS estimates for different cross-sectional specification of equation 1. In column 1, we observe the estimate when we use the youth guarantee dummy. In the second and the third, we use the counterfactual variable with the two different control groups. We observe that in every situation, we observe a positive effect of higher incentive. And so in the first case, we speak about correlation, but when we look at these two other columns, we can infer that there is a causal relationship between incentive and the share of newly hired under 13. Now, in order to control for the heterogeneous effect of a youth guarantee program across the productive system, we estimate a set of regression performed by separating for macro region. So in this table, we observe that the effect of this hiring incentive is positive and statistically significant only for firms located in the center and north part of Italy. And these results suggest that this kind of incentive risk to increase the geographical dualism of Italian labor market and the inequality employment outcomes of younger. In this table, we report the estimate for the difference in difference with the fixed effect. And also in this case, the previous results are confirmed. So there is this positive relationship between the use of youth guarantee incentive and employment and new hirings. At this point, we investigate whether the positive effect of the youth guarantee hiring incentive was offset by a similar increase of the share of young workers that separate from the same firms. From these results, it seems that we do not observe this substitution effect between subsidized workers and not subsidized workers, because the estimates are not statistically significant. So moving to the conclusion, what we can say? We can say that the introduction of the youth guarantee hiring incentive for the year 2017 causes in the short run a relatively weak increase of the share of newly hired workers, about 0.016 percentage points. The positive impact is more pronounced for firms located in the north and in the center of Italy. There is no effect no substitution effect, and no role seems to be played by firms time invariant unobserved heterogeneity. So it's important to keep in mind that this analysis, it's a short-run analysis. So we do not, we cannot infer any results about the long-run impact of hiring incentive. That's it. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks so much, Irene, for a very nice presentation. Is there any comments on the floor? Otherwise, I have a couple of comments, but if you have any comments, I can give you mine in the meantime. I mean, it's a great paper. It is an amazing data set. So we use this kind of data set in some other works. So I know this data. I use this data in other teams. Let me give you just a couple of comments and a couple of possible extensions of the paper. First of all, from the policy point of view, it may be interesting to show also the heterogeneity of the results by the dimension of firms. So for small medium firms and for big firms, and also by economic sectors, because you shown the distinction between the northern regions and the southern regions, but also from the economic sectors by the firm size, it will be interesting. And as a second comment, from the methodological point of view, the diff-in-diff scenario, the counterfactual scenario, is built on, let's say, a subjective question, so on the self-assessed questions on firms through the real question. So maybe in order to improve the comparability in the first stage, you can use a propensity score matching in order to improve the comparability among the two groups and to improve the results. So just a couple of comments. Is there any other comments on the floor?
May I?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry.
Please, Giuseppe.
Only one question. You told us that this incentives was an alternative to all other incentives, but you don't have data on all other incentives.
Okay, okay. This kind of incentive is not cannot be cumulated with another incentive. We can know if they use other incentive, but not which one. So we can control. We can try to control to take into account if the same firms use different. But we don't know if the new hirings to which kind of incentive the new hires are correlated. So we know that they make new hirings with incentive, but not with which. So this is
okay, because at the end of the day, they decide to use this or another one, meaning yes, maybe they needs more than other one, this, or they need someone else. Then it can be interesting if they use, for example, 1, 2, 3, or this
yes,
is
we can.
to others. Yes. So better to control all for this.
Yes, thanks.
Sorry.
Thanks also to Sergio for his comments, and yes, it's important to control for also the dimension, size, heterogeneity, and sectoral heterogeneity. For example, we have just tried to analyze the difference between small and big firms, and from first descriptive analysis, it seems that this kind of policy are more significant for the big one, maybe because there is also a bureaucracy that probably the very small firms are more difficult to manage. So So it's interesting. And for the difference with propensity score matching is true. We can try to implement this kind of approach. So thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your presentation. I think we can go to the second one by Antonella. Antonella, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I share my screen. My presentation is
Yes.
a work with Claudio Quintano. This work was started with a Francesco Pastore's idea, and we planned to work together on this article, on this research. Even the title of this research was chosen by Francesco, and this does success stem from non-STEM fields. In this article, just a moment. I want to share with the presentation. Okay, no problems. Okay, the aim of this paper is to analyze the determinants of the duration of the school to work transition for Italian graduates. We know that the school to work transition is the period between the end of the studies until the achievement of a stable jobs. But if the starting point is clear, it is not very clear what has to be considered as an ending point, because we have to consider the attainment of a stable job. That is a job that is at least a satisfactory job for young people. Why it is so problematic? We know that the problems connected with the school to work transition are because young people lack of work experience and even in the experience in searching for a job. But when we consider the Italian scenario, we can say that the school to work transition is particularly problematic in Italy for a number of reasons that are well known. For example, the labor market rigidity, the high levels of unemployment, the institutions and policies that should help young people in the labor market, but that are mainly underdeveloped. And even the education system plays a role because it is a high quality, but it is sequential and strongly disconnected from the labor market. So we have that for Italy, the situation is that it is after Romania, the country across European countries with the lowest share of tertiary graduated. But despite this, the school to work transition is strongly problematic even for Italian graduates. Our research starts from a survey on the professional integration of Italian graduates that is performed by the Italian National Statistical Office, and has a target group all the population of those who graduated in 2011 that are interviewed after 5 years from graduation, therefore in 2016. The response rate was of 70%, and through this data it was possible to calculate two types of durations. in the, of course, measured in the number of months, the duration to the first job and the duration of the school to work transition to the current job, that being the job that the individual is attained after 5 years from the graduation, in the most of cases can be considered even as a job different from the first one, and probably the job that has a strong impact on the life cycle of the individual. For the current job, we can also analyze many characteristics, if it was a satisfactory or an unsatisfactory job, if it was a job for which young people are undereducated or not, with a temporary or an indefinite contract as a freelancer or as an employee in the public or in the private sector. As for the variables that we considered, we used a number of individual variables such as gender, ethnicity, age, class, and marital status, some parental background, such as the mother's level of education and the father's profession, and many information and a number of data according to the educational career of the individual. So we can control for the field of study, for the graduation grade, for the type of high secondary school, the type of graduation, if bachelor degree or master degree, the regular frequency to the courses, the possible Erasmus experience, if the individual has moved to attain the university degree, if he worked during the studies, the time for graduation, and the possible post-degree training. As for the first results, as for the methodology, we used duration models. In particular, we considered the Kaplan-Meier functions that are a non-parametric approach. Then we estimated the Cox proportional model, that is a semi-parametric approach, and which allowed us even to control for unobserved heterogeneity. But we compared these results even with those from discrete time duration models, because even if the duration of the school to work transition was a continuous variable, it was detected only with a frequency, a monthly frequency. And finally, we considered and estimated even the models for competing risk analysis, because we considered that the end of the school to work transition may happen not only because an individual has attained a job, but even because the individual could transited in the status of inactivity, that we know that for the Italian labor market is still a reality, a situation that especially for females is not is still very common. So looking at the results, we calculating the mean durations according to different modalities of our variables. And we can see, for example, that on average women experience longer durations, but when we look at the characteristics of the current job, we can note that there are shorter transition when we consider the best jobs, those of high quality, for example, satisfactory job for which individuals are not overeducated, job with a permanent contract, and a stable job. We defined a stable job as the job for which the individual has stopped to search for another job. This could denote that there is a dual market, a dual labor market with shorter transitions to the best jobs and the longer transitions to jobs more unstable. But probably this could also denote the presence of unobserved heterogeneity, that is, that shorter transitions are associated with individuals having a higher skills that are not observed and introduced in the model. When we look at the field of studies, so we can see that shorter transitions are connected with health and STEM fields of studies. And again, when we look at the Italian regions, which refer to the region where the university is located, of course, we can see that the durations of the school-to-work transition for those who graduated in the south of Italy are longer in comparison to the north as well. And finally, when we look at the high secondary school type, we can see that longer transitions are connected with those who attained a humanistic or an artistic lyceums. Here are the Kaplan-Meier functions, which allow us to see how, even for Italian graduates, the school-to-work transition is long, especially when we look at the current job instead of to the first job. But when we group individuals according to, for example, the graduation grade, we can see that some interesting differences could be highlighted, and that shorter transitions are connected with those who graduated with a high score. And these are the Kaplan-Meier functions according to the field of study. These results should suggest that the response to our title of the research is positive, because STEM effectively guarantee a shorter transition. These are the results of our econometric models. As we can see, results from the different models that we estimated are mainly very similar. We applied the Cox parametric model with the correction for the frailty, taking into consideration the region where the university was located, because we considered that effectively for those who graduated in the center or in the north of Italy, there are more job opportunities. And even if comparing the results of the Cox semi-parametric model with and without frailty, results are very similar. The test for the theta coefficients is significant, denoting that there is a presence of unobserved heterogeneity. From these results, we can note that longer transition are associated with females, with those who graduated older, while shorter transitions are associated mainly with those who have a freelancer father, probably because some professions can be transmitted by the parents to their child. But other interesting results are that all the fields of studies in comparison to the humanistic one guarantee shorter transitions. And we can say that even having attained graduation in time or having had an Erasmus experience, having attained the courses with regularly allow for shorter transitions. So what we can say from these results is that shorter transitions are associated with those who graduated in time, frequenting the courses with a master degree in comparison to a bachelor degree. And finally, when we compare results from competing risk analysis with the other results which that do not consider the possibility that the transition ends with inactivity, we can say that the hazard ratio associated with the STEM fields of studies further increase, denoting probably less propensity to inactivity for those who graduated in a STEM field. Surprisingly, instead, there is not a decrease in the hazard ratio for females, but what emerges is that getting marriage instead denote a strong penalization, and this may indicate that it is not being female itself to create a longer transition or of course a transition to inactivity, but it is the marriage that is associated with this characteristic. To conclude some policy implication, we can say that it is important to inform people about the importance of the STEM studies and stimulate young people to attend university more actively and try to graduate in time. The Erasmus experience, working during the studies, are all factors associated with a shorter transition, but of course these findings require further investigation because this association may hide even different young people propensities, because it could be possible that those who want to start an Erasmus experience have effectively more a stronger attitude to activity in comparison to the others. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Antonella. Very nice presentation. Is there any comments from the floor?
How can I? Okay.
I have comments?
I have just.
Yeah.
Can
Yeah,
I?
sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
sure.
I have just a curiosity. Do you have some information about the way or the channel through which people have found work? Because it's interesting to understand if whether the duration of the school of to work transition is in part due to don't know if or family background or the fact that they to register, for example, to centri per l'impiego, or so which kind of channel they use to find the first job. Thanks.
Yes.
Thank you, Renan. Is there any other comments?
Yeah, I would like
I have it. Yeah, sure. Please, Misbah.
Yes. Yes, I would like to know whether you have taken into consideration the timing of their work period. Like, for example, whether they were underemployed, they were full employed, they were working specific period of time or not. Whether they end up in the first job, it was it was according to their skill set, and were they working full time for full hours, or they were underemployed. And it will also show the where they end up after the education.
Yes.
Thank you, Misbah. I have also, let me give you just as 2 comments, but we can also discuss maybe later. Connected with the question by Irene, a nice view could be the distinction between the formal channel and the informal channel, because as you know, the informal channel in Italy is quite relevant. So we have so many data on that. So maybe it could be another interesting line of research. My second comment is on the over education. How is measured the over education? Is related to the education, or is it related to the skill mismatch? And also, what's the relationship between the over education and the school to work transition? And also, is the over education is the vertical mismatch, so over education under education, or is it also an horizontal mismatch, so between fields of study? So sorry, Antonella, you have plenty of questions. You have just 2-3 minutes for.
Thank you. Are all questions very interesting questions. As for the over education, it is measured in a vertical sense. There is a question that asks if for the work you are doing, it is required the university degree or not, simply. And for the other questions, there is, I think, a unique response. That is that we have a very difficulties to analyze the school to work transition, because we lack of a statistical source that considers all the relevant factors. For example, in the labor force survey, we know which are the channels used to find the job, but we are unable to measure the duration of the school to work transition. USILC allows us to calculate, at least in the number of years, the duration of the school to work transition, because there are 2 retrospective questions that ask for the year when you finish the education and the year when you start the first stable job. But the problem is that it is impossible to have information about the region, and we have not the field of study. This data set is very rich of information about the educational career, but has not many information on the type of job. For example, if part-time, the number of hours worked. So it is impossible to consider all these facts that are very interesting and important to consider for the analysis.
Thank you very much. We run to the 3rd presentation by Francisco. Thank you so much, Antonella.
Thank you to you.
Francisco, the floor is yours. Thank you.
So, hello, greetings from Portugal. I'm very honored to be here with you for this session. Just a brief word to say that I'm really pleased to share with you some thoughts in this session. I met Francesco Pastore very briefly in some events, in some conferences, but he was always very, very generous in being involved in any kind of invitation that we would make to him to participate in our events and to participate in, for instance, our cost action, rural NEET Youth Network that is just running. So again, I'm very, very happy to share with you some thoughts. Please bear with me because my background is social psychology. This is a bit different approach in this session. In any case, I'm presenting some findings of a study conducted with our colleague Jale Tosun, who is a policy scientist, and Antonella, who is also here with us today. So the title of the presentation is Determinants of Job-finding Intentions Among Young Adults from 11 European countries. This presentation, this is just the outline. Very briefly, I will contextualize the topic of the presentation, and then I will go directly to the aim, research questions, and of course, in our understanding, what are the contributions to the literature and the main findings and take-out messages before just adding a couple of policy implications that we see coming out of this particular study. Just to kind of framework our approach to this study. Of course, as we all know, school-to-work transition has become longer, and this has been something that Francesco Pastore has worked a lot on, with positive and negative sides. As we know, these transitions, as they become longer, they also mean that people, for instance, are more and more involved in education, and they are improving their qualifications. But on the other side, this also constitutes a very significant risk for precariousness, erratic, uncertain pathways to job finding. And we also see that these pathways to the work market are more individualized, meaning that less and less young people are looking to formal support by institutions such as public employment services in order to find a job. They are becoming more and more dependent from informal social networks, and these pathways are, of course, nonlinear, with a very different combination of unemployment spells, part-time jobs, studying, etc. Something else that I would like to add, and this is very important for the contribution I would like to share with you today, is how the definition of school-to-work transition is also becoming growingly complex, in the sense that other contributions coming from the sociology and even from the social psychology fields are increasingly defying this notion that a successful transition from school to work is the one that ends with a fixed-term job. And more we see that this definition is being fixed by the notion of decent jobs in all its dimensions, meaning not only the fact that people to have a decent job must have access to decent salary, to social protection, to legal contracts, but also to the development of personal dimensions, such as the ones that we are going to focus here, which are job-finding intentions. So this means that we see the scholarship moving rather quickly to the consideration of both structural factors, such as economic growth or on-the-ground active labor market policies, but also to subjective factors that are related to young people's expectations. And the combination of these two sets of factors can help define better the quality of the school-to-work transition. In this context, job-finding intentions are subjective factors that refer to the steps individuals are willing to take to find a job, or at least to improve job-finding prospects. In the case of our study, we focused on three main types of job-finding intentions of young people. These three sets of job-finding intentions include mobility, which are collapsed by migrate internally or migrate externally, so within the country or outside the country. Lifelong learning in terms of improving skills or having the intention to develop new skills, and also expectations adjustment, meaning that to find a job, we may need to lower expectations about earnings or even lower expectations about working conditions. And this means specifically to accept jobs with lower levels of responsibility, autonomy, or intellectual effort. I would just like to mention that this study has been already published, so you can find it. It's fully available in the Social Indicators Research Journal. Our aim is then to examine, we have two aims: to examine job-finding intention associated with three sets of different factors: the individual factors, parental factors, and social factors. And I will go a bit more in detail into this, and also to assess how these association change across European countries. I must say that we had a very large set of findings, so I will focus only on the main findings related to our first aim, and will just comment very briefly on the differences between countries. Our expected contribution to the literature is to, first of all, understand how different sets of factors located at different levels of reality, such as the individual, parental, and social levels, are associated with these subjective indicators associated to the transition from school to work, and also to offer useful basis to inform policies, especially in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. I must clarify that our data comes from a public data set that resulted from a Horizon project called CUPES. Jale, our colleague, was the PI of this project. And this data set includes a whole data from young people, but also from their families, from two generations. The primary respondents are the children's generation, aged 18 to 35, and the secondary respondents are their parents. And this is the list of countries involved in the project, 11 in total. And the sample size of the data, the minimum requirement per country was 1,000 young adults and 500 parents. So we included in this analysis a total of more of 20,000 observations and almost 600 contain information at least about one of the parents. So the main variables in more detail, I've mentioned the outcome variables, those related to job finding intentions. Then at the individual factors level, we considered gender, level of education, different age classes, also the professional condition, including student being employed, unemployed, or inactive, and the satisfaction about the financial condition. Let's say this is the variable that we included to represent financial situation of young people. Then we also included factors related to the parental level, namely future standard, and this has to do with the expectations that parents had regarding the future standard of living of their children, their perceived influence in education and how much this has influenced their children's education. We also included how they perceive their influence on the career that their children were developing, their own satisfaction with financial condition, their educational level, and then their employment status. And finally, and this is, I think, one of the innovative issues or contributions of our study, was to include how social factors can also shape job finding intentions in two ways. One is social activity or social engagement, mainly how much these young people were involved in voluntary work and social, sports, or cultural organizations, and also the number of friends who were already employed. So how much their closer friendship networks and their status regarding employment could influence their own job finding intentions. This is just one example of how we addressed data analysis. So we used logic model coefficients to analyze data, including also in the models data for each of the countries, considering Italy as the reference country here, considering that Italy has the longer transition from school to work. And actually, we base this, of course, on Francesco's work as a reference for our decision. So for the main findings, and I will just go through them very generally, and of course we can afterwards discuss on this. First of all, when we see analyze the associations between individual factors included in the data set and job finding intentions, what we have found is that both internal and external mobility intentions were lower among women and among older participants. We also found that those that were less satisfied with their own financial situation and who were still enrolled in education were less inclined to move outside the country. Something else that was also very evident from our findings is that women were more willing to improve and also to develop new skills in this perspective of long-term or a long life learning. And finally, also at this individual level, we found that those still enrolled in education, those that were inactive or unemployed, showed lower earning expectations. At the parental factors and job finding intentions level, when we studied the associations between these two sets of factors, overall, we found that parental factors were not very relevant in terms of the associations they had with job finding intentions of their children, both in terms of scope and magnitude. And specifically, we interpret this in the fact that their socialization of their children overlapped the individual factors' influence on job finding intentions. So to a certain extent, we believe that the influence of parental factors are already reflected in individual factors, such as, for instance, the level of education. Interestingly, in terms of the associations between social factors and job finding intentions, we found first that participants showing a higher involvement in charities, environmental organizations, sport activity were also more willing to move abroad. So they showed a greater openness to external mobility. We also find that having more friends in employment reduced internal mobility intentions. And this also contributed to an increased willingness to improve or develop new skills. We finally found that greater overall social involvement was connected with lower expectations regarding earnings and job conditions and responsibilities. So it seems, and just as this is just a general comment, it seems that as more young people are have a stable network, a social network, they seem to adjust to, let's say, the local job market conditions, whether in terms of earnings, whether it is in terms of education. So just some takeout messages. First of all, job finding intentions vary considerably across individual factors such as gender, financial conditions, or professional condition. And this is particularly interesting among those that are still studying. If you may remember that I mentioned that those that are still studying had lower expectations about their earnings. Well, that can be a double-sided effect, let's say, because of course they when they're about to enter the job market, they might have lower expectations, which is reasonable about their earnings. But this also questions a bit the role of education in terms of creating positive expectations about your earning conditions. So that's something that we can discuss a bit more. Another takeout message is that parental factors are as pivotal in shaping in people's job finding intentions, but this is especially interesting compared to the importance of social factors. And here we found that social engagement and having friends who are employed can shape mobility or drive educational expectations as well. From the policy implications side, just two ideas that we would like to share based on the general findings of this study. Of course, we have country comparisons that we added to our paper, but here I would like to stress that as the definition of school to work transition is changing and including more and more subjective issues, subjective dimensions, it is really important that the relevance of structural factors behind the successful transitions to the labor market are combined with the more subjective decision-making issues. Something else that I would like to add is that from the policy side, it seems that tailoring policies to the needs of specific groups and the needs of the individual needs of young people is not on the radar. And a good example of this is how, for instance, main policy instruments such as the Recovery and Resilience Mechanism rely mostly on universal active labor market policies without specifying, for instance, subgroups of young people such as women, NEETs, migrants who have very specific subjective needs when entering the labor market. So that is all for now, and of course I'm more than happy to reply to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francisco, for your very nice presentation. Is there any comments on the floor? I don't see any hand raised. I have just a couple of comments. First of all, is there any difference between STEM and non-STEM? Because, as you know, for the STEM, from the last presentation by Antonella, the STEM component, especially for the female, is quite relevant. So, is there any difference in your data about STEM and non-STEM? So, are you able to investigate the STEM and non-STEM? And also, it would be interesting to, let's say, integrate your data set with some behavioral data, like, let's say, the big 5 personality traits, in order to investigate whether, let's say, the openness to experience may be useful other than such other factors. So I don't know if you can, let's say, in the next future with the cost action, you can build a new data set with some different data set. So there's a new lines of research on behavioral economics, so behavioral traits, so how behavioral traits are going to have an effect on such an outcomes in the labor market.
Yeah, just thank you, Sergio, for your comments. Just a very brief comment from my side. If I'm not mistaken, but Antonella can correct me, unfortunately, our data set did not have STEM, non-STEM variable that we could compare, but that would definitely be very interesting, especially, as you mentioned, for the gender issues. And regarding your last comment, yes, it would definitely be very interesting to create some mediation models, for instance, where you could include some subjective factors that are very, very well relevant in terms of the transition decision-making process. I would add, for instance, agency or self-efficacy or grit. These are just some examples, and see how this is in between some of these factors that we included here, such as social factors, and then job-finding intentions. So thank you for your challenge. Let's see if in our cost action we can move along with this idea.
Thank you very much. I think we can move to the 4th presentation by Claudio. Claudio, sorry, we had to be on time, so 12 minutes for you for the presentation. Sorry for that. Thank you, Francisco, for your presentation.
I present the short contribution with Professor Quintano. I share my screen.
Thanks so much.
Okay, this is a very brief tribute to Francesco and his idea to enlarge the role of business in higher education and expanding continuous training in the labor market. We want to, in this today, it is important for us to remember some of the ideas of Francesco's idea about the school-to-work transition, and in particular the role of the higher technical institutes. Indeed, higher technical institutes are some specialized technical universities that are finalized to reduce the distance between the educational theoretical contents and the skills and competencies required by the labor market. They provide tertiary vocational training, and in Italy they were only recently introduced in 2010 with the idea of train technicians that are a sort of middle managers to contribute to the development of Enterprise 4.0. Since their introduction, we have that the distribution of these institutes across Italy was not very uniform, as we can see from the cartogram on the right side of this slide. There are some regions where they are totally absent. They are specialized institutions in the particular fields. The main fields are energy efficiency, sustainable mobility, new technologies for life, new technologies for the made in Italy, innovative technologies for cultural activities and tourism, information and communication technologies. The main idea was that in each region, only one of these type of institutions should be present in order to guarantee a wide coverage of the full Italian territory. Which are the main characteristics of the higher technical institute? They have a duration of 2 years, and in order to access to these institutes, people should have the diploma from high secondary school. The scope is to train based on experience and with an apprenticeship that is due in enterprises and based on action and experimentations in order to simulate the everyday world of work. In order to guarantee the strictness with the enterprises, teachers, at least from for the 50% are from business. Many institutions are involved in the organization of higher technical institutes. In fact, we have, besides the education and the economy and finance ministries, even universities, unions, Indire and Inapp, that is well known in this session, of course. Why talk about higher technical institutes in this specific session that is dedicated to Francesco? We remained impressed by the fact that in July 2022, just the day before when Francesco died, the Italian Parliament approved the reform of the higher technical institutes. This reform was sustained by Confindustria, that is the principal association of representative manufacturing and services company in Italy, but it was strongly sustained by the Draghi governments and his team of economists, and was directly incorporated in the National Recovery and Resilience Plan. Something about specifically the Francesco ideas about the higher technical institutes. Francesco believed that to fight against the youth unemployment, it was needed an integrated reform of the labor market based on the improvement of some of the already existing institutions, such as the Youth Guarantee Fund and of the education system that is too much disconnected from the labor market. He was even a great supporter of the idea that this improvement should be needed. And we want to report in particular the contents very briefly of a speech that Francesco held in Milan in the occasion of an important webinar on vocational tertiary education at the Fondazione Agnelli. Francesco believed that the offer of the higher technical institutes is still insufficient, especially in the south of Italy, and that the increase of this offer could represent an important opportunity for Italy to improve and to implement effectively the vocational training in tertiary education. And Francesco reported even some data about the attendance of higher technical institutes. In particular, he said that until 2020, when he made this speech, about 15,000 young people were enrolled in this type of formal education, and that every year about 3,000 of young people graduated from these higher technical institutes, and that surprisingly, after 1 year from graduation, the levels of employment for these people is very high. He drew a profile of young people who used this type of formal education. They are mainly males living in the north center of Italy, because they are especially present in Lombardy, while in the south only Campania has this great offer in this sense. They come mainly from the Technical Institute as high secondary school, and they have a low socioeconomic and cultural background. The main fields of specialization that they choose are the sustainable mobility and tourism. Francesco believed that the improvement and the increase of the offer of these higher technical institutes was a way to maintain in education more people, especially those that are not very ready to afford the labor market, and at the same time they want not to attain a regular university course. So it is for us very important today to share with you these memories about Francesco, and I hope that they could give us even the opportunity to continue to his work in the labor market field, in particular with young people, because his interest was very sincere and went over the interest as a researcher. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Antonella. It's a very nice presentation. Also, the last picture by Francesco. I completely agree with you. Obviously, from the professional education, if you it is so strange to watch your map about the professional education in Italy. If you look at your map, we need the professional education in the south. So we have no professional ITS in the south. I was looking about my region, my originally region in in Calabria we have no ETS, so we need the ETS, especially in the south of Italy. In the south of Italy, when the unemployment rate is so high, is higher with respect to the rest of Italy. And also, if you compare the rank of Italy in the population with the tertiary professional education, I was looking at the last report by the OECD on. So if you look at the share of 25-64 years old with a short cycle tertiary education in 2016, Italy was about 0. With some other countries like Canada, Japan, Austria, France, about 25%, 20%, 15%. So this is really a weakness of the Italian labor market and of the Italian education structure. So I obviously fully agree with you, and thank you so much for this contribution from the policy point of view. Thank you so much. I think we can go to the fifth presentation. Michele. Michele. Thank you. Yes. We are not able to listen you. You had to unmute yourself. Okay, right. But we are not able to listen you again. Maybe there's some problem with your microphone. No? Not yet? Not yet.
Now?
Yes. Now, yes. Yes.
Perfect.
Now,
Perfect.
yes, that's great.
Okay. Thank you. And thanks for this opportunity. I realized this work with Fabio Clementi and Enzo Valentini from University of Macerata and Federica Alfani and Vasco Molini of World Bank. And we realized this analysis of labor market in Morocco, and specifically about the need questions for different reasons. The need phenomenon has increasingly gained attention in both developed and developing countries. In Morocco, labor market analysis has tended to focus on understanding. In Morocco, labor market analysis has tended to focus on understanding what determines unemployment or inactivity within the entire population, with no specific focus on those between 15 and 24 years old. And with this paper, we want to provide an analysis of the characteristics and the dynamics of needs in the last decades. And according to the most recent census, there are about 6 million Moroccans between the age of 15 and 24. And Morocco is currently in a developed window that the demographers call a demographic bonus. And the current age distribution of Morocco's population represents such as an opportunity, but it also presents the major challenge of harnessing that human capital and putting it to the best use. And yet, because of the extreme importance of gaining an understanding of the duration of the need condition, we work to overcome the data limitation of the existing method by constructing a synthetic panel of individuals between 15 and 24 years old over a 9-year period. Before moving to on the specific observation of Morocco, let's look at the characteristics of needs in the OECD countries. I think this is very interesting because we will find these characteristics also in Morocco. The 2018 OECD reports highlight that in almost all OECD countries, NEET rates are higher for women than for men, and NEET rates are generally higher for young people in their 20s than for those in their teens. And this difference may be the results of the expansion of upper and secondary, the upper secondary education in many of these countries, and caring for children and living with a partner can also make up substantial difference. The reason is likely that parenthood compels young people to devote their time and energy to childcare rather than education or working outside the home. The figure narrow the focus on to Morocco and other Middle East and North African region countries. And MENA region, in particular the North African part, seems to perform worse than many other regions, both in developed and developing countries. And in 2017, Morocco was the worst performer among MENA countries that were not in a situation of conflict or stage fragility, for example, Iraq or Yemen. The NEET rates in Morocco is 2 percentage points above of the Egypt, and 4 and 5 points higher than Tunisia and Algeria. In this paper, we use data from labor force survey conducted in Morocco in the last decade. Its main objective is identifying the volume of the active population, as well as the main demographic, cultural, and social professional characteristics of workers. This survey contains a rotating panel component that can be used to examine the persistence and the dynamics of the labor market. This panel component is available only for about half of the sample, and only for 2 years, for example, 2010 and 2011, or 2017 and 2018. We use this panel component to realize a robustness check of our methodology of synthetic panel. This figure showed that the age distribution of male needs, it did not change substantially between 2007 and 2018, as it did for females, especially for younger ones. The rapid increase in enrollment rates of young women in secondary and tertiary education explain this marked difference. However, when the same female approach the age at which they would normally be entering the labor market, this positive improvement they experienced in their early educational enrollment has been erased. These two figures focus on 2018 and provide a more comprehensive snapshot of labor market by age and gender. And these two figures confirm the differences between male and females. With increasing age and the abandonment of school, the end of the school period, females find out more difficult to enter the labor market, and this effect is for men much smaller. The analysis we have carried out in this study is divided in 2 parts. In the first part, we use a logic model to observe how different characteristics of young people, for example, age, level of education, and household head characteristics affect the probability of being NEET, and this analysis is then performed for subgroups of males and females. In the second part, we observe the persistence of the phenomenon over a period of 10 years. And while the current panel data module allows the creation of year-by-year transition matrix, any longer-term analysis of labor force transition is not feasible, is not possible. A majority of the analysis of the Moroccan labor market conducted so far indicate that the duration of inactivity or unemployment tends to particularly long, and the need for a longer perspective of labor market outcomes encouraged us to adopt a methodology originally developed for analyzing poverty dynamics, the so-called synthetic panel developed by Dang and Raju. This approach, the synthetic panel, using repeated cross-sections, produce transition matrices, the results of which tend not to be significantly different from those one might have produced by using a real panel. This approach follow 3 steps. And the first, we estimate a logic model for a binary dependent variable. In this case, 0 if you are non-NEET, 1 if you are NEET. In the first round of cross-sectional data in our study 2010, using a specification which includes only time invariant covariates. This parameter, the parameter estimates from this model, are applied to the same time invariant regressor in the second survey round, in this case 2018, to provide an estimate of the first period's NEET and non-NEET condition for the individuals surveyed in the second round. And we then conduct an analysis of transition in and out of the NEET condition based on the NEET non-NEET condition observed in the second round, along with the estimates from the first round. With this method, this method produces lower and upper bound estimates of transitions in and out of NEET condition. And now we can observe the results. In these figures, we have the results for the first part of logic regression. The results show a clear profile of needs already provided in the descriptive analysis and in part in OECD report. In particular, the need category is composed mainly of young women 20 to 24 years old with low levels of education and typically married. It's interesting to see the results when we perform this analysis by subgroups. And the first point is the difference in the impact of marital status between males and females. Married men have a lower probability of being NEET, while the opposite can be observed for women. These results suggest that once married, it is ever harder for women to enter the labor market. Differences between men and women can also be found for other variables such as educational level or the household status, because the characteristics of household head influence the possibility and the probability of being NEET differently for male and by area. of residents show different effects of for women and for men. For men, this has the positive effect of reducing the probability of being NEET. This may because in rural areas, men can often find work in agriculture or undertaking jobs that require high levels of physical effort, for example. Here we can observe the results of synthetic panel, and we have observed two transition matrices. The rows in the first table indicate the proportion of individuals in 2018 estimate to be in one on this four group. The first row is these young people is NEET both in 2010 and 2018. In the second row, moved out to NEET during that time period. The first row, the probability fell into the NEET condition, and in the fourth row were never in NEET between 2010 and 2018. The results suggest that the NEET condition tend to persist, comparing to the share of NEET in both periods of those who were NEET in 2010. We found that then those NEET in 2018 had in 2010, sorry, had 70 to 90% probability of remaining NEET after 10 years, and this impression of substantial immobility is confirmed by the complementary results of the non-NEET in 2010. In the second table, we observe the results divided by subgroups, and the results, these results confirm what we have seen previously, showing how the problem is particularly important for females. And to confirm the results, we carried out several robustness tests using the real component, the real panel component of the datasets, and the results we obtain are in line with what we have seen previously, confirming the goodness of the methodology used. In conclusion, we can summarize the results from these two steps. In the first part show us quite clear characteristics regarding the probability of finding oneself in a situation of unemployment or non-school attendance. Females are the most severely affected part of the population, especially if married or if they are a lower level of education, and also the family situation, the household situation affect the probability of being NEET. In the second part, the matrices show us a further problem. The condition of being NEET tend to remain the condition of being NEET tends to persist over time, showing the difficulties of getting out of this condition, and also in this case in a marked way for women. Given the results, there are two economic policy interpretations, one from the point of view of prevention and improvement of the initial status, encouraging females participation and improving education, for example. And the second type of intervention concerns policies aimed at getting out of the NEET condition with training or integration policies, particularly aimed for at females. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michele, for your very nice paper.
Thank you.
It's as we expect, all the results are driven by the generation. Do you have any data on children in your sample or not? Because I didn't watch any data about the presence of children.
Yes. I think
Maybe
in
it
the
was
first
my fault because I didn't.
it's a very important question, because when we have realized this work, one of the conditions that we would like to observe is the presence of children, but the recent data in this data set about the presence of children. But I think it's a very important question, but
I think so.
that, yeah.
Yeah, because all of your results are all driven by the generation.
Especially in a country where,
in
a country when a young woman have children in a younger age.
Yes, there is a question by Simona Lorena Comi. You had to, Simona, please.
You hear me?
Yeah, sure. No,
yes.
yes.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Sorry. It was really interesting, your paper, because basically you are calling NEET what we have known for a long period as female inactivity. And I was wondering how many of the women that you are classifying as NEET entered at some point in their life the labor market, because probably they switched from education directly to a total inactivity. And it is in a way a different condition with respect to the NEET condition, which is a sort of period outside of the labor force, and not, but still in a way attached to the labor force. Total inactivity is probably something even different.
Yes. Very important question. We think that the NEET situation and the inactivity of males is very important in this case, specifically in developed countries, and in this case Morocco. We don't observe this particular question because we focus our attention only about the persistence of this of the phenomena of NEET. But I think that this can be a very important question, but we need another research to focus this phenomenon, but also other characteristics, and for example the policy that Morocco improved for labor market, and other questions. I think that there are a lot of questions that we can use for future works.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thank you very much, Simona, for your last presentation. I had to ask you just 10-12 minutes for the presentation because we are almost sorry for this, for your last presentation.
No, it's okay. I'll be quick. Okay, I'm very honored to be here and in this very interesting session in memoriam of Francesco Pastore. And I would like to thank all the organizers for inviting me. Francesco was a great man and a great economist, I might add. One of the few Italians who studied seriously, let me just say, school to work transition and other important things like youth labor market or the organization of the employment services at the regional level, and it will be missed. The paper I'm going to present is about the effect of the reform of the short vocational track, the effect of this reform on school to work transition. And this paper has been published in special issues of which Francesco was the editor. Why it is important to study school-to-work transition? Because in Italy, it is it's still a problem. And we have just seen that the NEET rate in Morocco was about 28%, but in Italy, we have 23% of our youth that are not in education, employment, or training in 2020. And we have 10 percentage point rate of NEET higher than the EU average. And we have the longest school-to-work transition length in Europe, 3 years, which must be compared to 1 year in France and Germany, of 9 months in the UK. So this is still an open issue in our country. And vocational education and training can be a strategic asset in reducing school-to-work transition. So we are starting to investigate one. We started with this one, but then we are going on these topics and to study the effect of the many reforms that affect this, vocational education and training in Italy in the last decades. In this paper in particular, we studied the impact on school-to-work transition of the reform I mentioned, that basically extended the length of vocational education, short vocational education and training from 2 to 3 years, and the scope introducing more general contents in the subjects of this short track in 2003, 2002 and 3 in Italy. Our identification strategy exploit the staggered implementation across Italian regions, so with a difference in different two-way fixed effect estimator. We contribute to the literature in many ways, adding to the literature that compare vocational education with general education, but also more in general to the literature that is growing about the effect of reforms on short vocational tracks. Here is a picture of what the reform did. As you can see, before the reform, the short vocational track lasted 2 years, and it was the end of the school for those who graduated from it. In 2002, this track was lengthened. Its length was increased, extended to 3 years, and an additional year was added at the end of it, which was basically a 1-year diploma, but it takes this part of the reform took a longer time to be implemented. Just to give you some number, in 2010, 7 years after the reform, only 4 regions activated this additional year, and it involved just 2% of the young people graduated from the short vocational track. So it took a longer period to be introduced. We are going to use the pooled cross-section data from the Italian Labor Force Survey from 2014 and 2019, which provide detailed retrospective information about the high levels of education attainment, as well as information about the graduation year and information about the first year in which they started to work. So the first year of employment. Simply by subtracting these two variables, we are able to measure the length of the school-to-work transition in year. We have around 9,000 individuals who graduated 8 years before and 8 years after the reform, but then we're going to provide some robustness shortening this span, this period around the time in which the reform was introduced. We define as street as those individuals who graduated 3 years after the year in which the region adopted the reform. So we call this this period of 3 years after the pivotal graduation year. And we consider those graduated in Trentino Alto Adige as always treated, because Trentino Alto Adige implemented a region such as this way before all the other regions. Here are some descriptive statistics. As you can see, on average, school-to-work transition lasts 1.8 years in Italy in our data set. And before the reform, this period was up to 2 year and 2.3. And after the reform, actually, it declined to around of about 10 months. There is no difference in the share of female before and after the reform, while the share of migrants actually did change, and we in the paper you can find some robustness according to this change. And as you can see, the age at graduation did not change, even if the reform extended the length of the track, because probably it helped also in easing the way towards the diploma. It increased the number of individuals that did not repeat any year during this short track. And this is the question we are going to estimate, which include two set of fixed effect, and as is a two-way fixed effect, which are region fixed effect and graduation year fixed effect. And then we have a dummy reform, which is defined as I mentioned before. And then some individual variables like gender, year of birth, migrant status, and field of studies. The baseline result are shown in this table, and as you can see, but also the coefficient is negative. The period of school-to-work transition was reduced significantly by this reform, and the size of the coefficient does not change when we add more control progressively in the specification of the equation. So it's a pretty stable, and it corresponds to about a 5-month reduction of the school-to-work transition from this short track. We then interacted the refer dummy with gender and migrant status, and we find that female exhibit a higher and significant effect of this reform, and also migrant students benefited more than native students. In order to uncover some non-linearity, we also interact the migrant status and gender together with the reform, and the picture that emerges it is that migrant students benefited more from this reform and female, while the only groups that probably did not change, the coefficient is positive but not statistically significant, are Italian boys. And then we investigated also the organizational model of the vocational education and training system, which vary across regions. In some regions organized their vocational education and training track around state-run vocational public high school, which traditionally offered 5 years the diploma course, and after this reform started to offer 3 years vocational course. And this region are Friuli Venezia Giulia, Emilia-Romagna, Toscana, Umbria, Campania, and Sicilia. In all the other regions, the model that was adopted to provide this type of education is a quasi-market model, in which private non-profit accredited institutions, which are training centers, basically compete with public school to offer these short vocational programs. And of course, more competition as the side effect of improving the quality of the training provided, and all other educational services, and also to ease school-to-work transition. This is basically the same mechanism that Francesco described with the employment services in models of organizational model across the Italian regions. And quasi-market and training centers, the private training centers have a stronger connection with the local entrepreneurial system. And thus probably they are able to find jobs for their students more easily. And in fact, we find that when we interact our reform with the more organizational model, we find that the effect was stronger in those regions where the model was a quasi-market. We then run some robustness exercise, a set of them. And the first one is related to the new literature about the shortcoming of two-way fixed effect estimates. It's a growing literature, and we run two different exercises. The first one is the estimate of an event study. We adopted an event study approach and use the weighting scheme proposed by Sun and Abraham, and here are in our results. We find basically a stable effect of the reform, which lasted for 5 years after the introduction of the reform. So there isn't any dynamic effect. And then we use the approach proposed by Kelowin and Santana, a different one with different weights, and we estimated the baseline equation, and the coefficient is similar to the one that we find with the standard approach. So we conclude that this type of problem is not really worrisome in our estimates. And then we have a lot of more robustness checks that you can find in the paper. We control, change the specification, control it for province fixed effect or local labor market condition. We use a different assignment rule based on the year of birth rather than the graduation year. We narrowed the control groups, those who graduated to those who graduated at least 3 years before the reform. We restricted to the 4 regions that account for half of the total vocational education and training graduates. We include also in the estimate people who never worked, and then we restrict the time interval around the reform. All the results are consistent. They provide coefficients which are very similar in size with the one with our baseline estimate. So we conclude that that reform was effective in easing school to work transition by around 5 months, corresponding to a 24% reduction of the average length of time between the exit from vocational education and the first entry into employment. And these results were robust, and females and migrants benefited more from this reform when compared to boys. And we are still working on this topic, and we are using this same reform to see the effect on other outcomes, such as wages and the stability of career and the probability of unemployment. And then we are moving to other reforms that shape the vocational education and training in Italy in the following years, such as the introduction of a dual system in 2016, or the tertiary vocational education, or ITS, about which we have seen the very interesting presentation before. And then we are going to explore more the role of the organizational model adopted by the different regions, because we believe that it can make a different, and it will be a further mechanism that can create regional differences. And probably in this type of topic is not a good thing, because it can increase inequality across regions. So I was very, very quick, and hopefully I didn't took too much time.
No, please, you were perfect. Thank you so much, Simona. I don't know if there are any comments from the floor. We are looking forward some other contributions on need on youth employment, because especially now that we have we do not have any contribution from Francesco, so we need some other contribution on youth employment and on need. If there is no comment, let me just say that please stay tuned. So take your coffee, because we held some many other sessions all night long. So we had a session on labor economics in half an hour. We had another session during the night on population, personality, and policy, which is chaired by Compalsina. Compalsina is here. And we have also some other session on Chinese labor market during the night, and we have also another amazing session early morning tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m. I'm sharing this session on COVID-19 and labor market, which is based on the handbook of labor economics, which is edited by Klaus. Let me give you the floor to Klaus to close this section. Let me give you, first of all, Klaus, my best luck for the Germany team, because they are playing now in the World Championship against Costa Rica, if I well remember.
Well,
Klaus,
I have no idea what they're doing. They should win, I think. They should win with 7 or 8 goals, and they are all safe. Okay, but I'm not sure how far they are. Okay, now thank you very much for a very intense and productive session. We have recorded it, and I'm stopping